Hello, everybody. This is the Petty Politic on this Monday evening. Of course, you guys see the moniker. You see what's going on there. White men are putting in decline, our country in decline, right? So I wanted to talk about something that was like heavy on my mind the other day, right? Why are the Republican voters deciding, or the Republican Party deciding to alienate black voters in 2026? And I was just asking that question, trying to figure out what was going on. And it was like on my mind all week. Because as a 60-year-old black woman who has voted Democratic since I was old enough to cast a vote, I no longer believe Republicans losing black voters is some unfortunate misunderstanding. No, it's not. I believe somewhere along the line, and especially in 2026, that the Republican Party made a conscious political decision to stop trying to genuinely connect with the black community altogether. And before anybody starts screaming in the comment section or talking about, hear me out first, because this didn't happen overnight. This gerrymandering thing, all of the attack on DEI and all that, this has been decades in the making. Because I grew up hearing from my parents and my grandparents talk about the civil rights. Remember when black voters, or black people couldn't just casually walk into a polling place and vote without fear. They remember the dogs, the fire hoses, the lynchings, intimidation, segregation, humiliation. They remembered all that. They remembered the fight to simply be treated like a human being in this country. And they also remember who stood where politically. Because we hear this all the time. We hear this from a lot of people. My parents remember LBJ signing the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. They remembered Southern segregationists, furious that Democrats supported this integration. And they remembered those same segregationists slowly finding comfort inside the Republican Party through Nixon's Southern strategy. Black people did not imagine that history. We inherited that history. That's why it drives me crazy when folks act like black voters are just emotional or emotionally on the Democratic plantation bullshit or brainwashed for not trusting the Republicans. No, a lot of us are responding to the patterns we've watched over our entire lives. Reagan talking about welfare queens, the Willie Horton ads, law and order, inner city crime, today's rhetoric of the anti-woke, merit-based hiring, illegal DEI, ending racial preferences. This is what we hear today. Colorblind society, America first hiring, radical left ideology. We hear all of that. But every generation had its own version of the coded radical politics designed to activate this fear, this resentment, without always saying black people directly out loud. And let's be honest. Donald Trump didn't invent this strategy. He didn't invent this, but he absolutely removed the mask, snatched the mask off of the people who were involved with these kind of policies. Trump changed the Republican Party from a conservative political movement into a grievance-based identity movement. Everything became about anger, fear, resentment, humiliation, punishment, owning enemies. Now we got white dudes talking about, y'all trying to discriminate against me. I'm a white man. Y'all discriminating against me. And once that became the heart of the movement, black voters became even less politically useful to them, to the Republican Party. People keep asking me, why do you want to stay on the Democratic plantation? Because the Republican Party has never moved any of our policies forward. Republican Party has never moved any black people's policies forward, not one time. And they have no intention of doing so. Okay. we understand because we have lived experiences with these Republican Party. Our country is in free fall because of this grievance movement that Donald Trump has brought to the forefront. Our country is in free fall because of it. See, if your movement depends on pretending that racism ended decades ago, then Black people speaking honestly about discrimination becomes inconvenient to you. The one person that understood this or should understand this is freaking Kash Patel with his goofy tail. Listen to Kash Patel. Come on, Kash, go.
I was called detestable sand nigger.
Have you ever been subject to racism as an individual?
Fortunately, Senator, yes. I want to get into those details with my family.
Let's get into a few of them. Tell me about it.
If you look at the record from January 6th, where I testified before that committee, because of my personal information being released by Congress, I was subjected to a direct and significant threat on my life. And I put that information in the record. I had to move. In that threat, I was called detestable, and I apologize if I don't get it all right, but it's in the record, a detestable sand nigger who had no right being in this country. You should go back to where you came from. You belong with your terrorist home friends. That's what was sent to me. That's just a piece of it. But that's nothing compared to what the men and women in law enforcement face every day. And that's why they have my support.
Okay. Growing up, were you subject to racism?
Yes, sir.
Now, I think the reason you're here has a lot to do with your work on Crossfire Hurricane. Are you familiar with that FBI operation?
I am, Senator.
So Senator Durbin mentioned the church report and the history of abuse, but he failed to mention Crossfire Hurricane. He failed to mention the Horowitz report. Wonder why? If you're waiting for these guys over here to figure that out, you're going to die waiting.
Even Kash Patel understands. Even Kash Patel understands. If your movement depends on pretending that systematic racism ended decades ago, then Black people speaking honestly, people like me, speaking honestly about discrimination becomes inconvenient, or I'm imposing on you or trying to make you feel guilty. If your politics revolve around attacking DEI, complaining about immigrants, obsessing over urban crime, fighting culture wars every hour of the day, then Black communities stop being people to understand and become props in a larger grievance machine. That's what 2026 feels like to me. Republicans don't talk seriously to Black people anymore. They talk about us. They talk at us. And every election cycle is the same performance that they give. Show up at a Black church, take a few photos, quote MLK, say Democrats are have failed Black communities. Why y'all on that Democratic plantation? Then they immediately return to pushing policies and rhetoric that make men feel targeted and dismissed, specifically Black people. And honestly, Donald Trump completely accelerated this whole shift. But once Trump took over the Republican Party, loyalty became more important than your character. Performance became more important than competence. Cruelty became the entertainment of the day. And outrage became political currency. And you can see the transformation in the people surrounding him and the transformation of this country because of Donald Trump. You have to take J.D. Vance, for instance. Now, I'm going to say something that some people may not like, but it's how I genuinely feel. That man, J.D. Vance, comes across like a body snatcher candidate. Seriously. I remember J.D. Vance sounding conflicted about Donald Trump, saying Donald Trump was trash. I remember him criticizing Donald Trump years ago, thinking, okay, maybe this is a conservative who still has some independent thinking left, who sympathizes with regular, ordinary individual people. But now, every time I hear him speak, it feels like his ambition swallowed his inauthenticity whole and complete. The man is smooth. I'll give him that. He knows how to sound calm, reasonable, educated, and polished while carrying some of the most divisive messaging imaginable. This J.D. Vance.
And here's some good news. Ladies and gentlemen, we are bringing the United States of America back, and it's starting right here in the great state of Missouri. Now, I want to talk about just a few of the things that we've been doing to try to rebuild the United States of America, because I'm 41 years old. And for my entire life, the story of my hometown, the story of great manufacturers like this one, is that they were shedding jobs instead of creating jobs, and that workers were suffering instead of thriving, and that we saw factories in our own hometowns and our own home states closing down instead of rebuilding and adding. And what Donald Trump has done in just 18 months with the support of the great congressional leadership that's here today is that we have made it great to build in the United States of America once again. We're investing in the United States of America once again, and we're investing in American workers.
See, I listened to his manufacturing speech today, right? And underneath all of that working Americans talk was the same tired MAGA formula. Democrats are crazy. Immigrants are dangerous. Cities are collapsing. That's all I heard. That's all I heard from him. Republicans alone are the only ones that represent the real Americans. And while he's saying this stuff, he's standing there defending one of the most chaotic administrations we've seen in modern day history. Him praising Trump like he's saving America while families are struggling with the rising costs of gas and food, instability overseas, war, constant political dysfunction. And what really bothers me is not how normalized dishonesty has become inside the Republican Party. Republicans openly brag about redrawing congressional maps, openly bragging about making districts safer for themselves politically, openly bragging about disenfranchising the black voter, openly attacking voting access measures, early voting, mail-in voting, all of those things, attacking all of those things, and then turn around shocked that black voters don't trust their intentions. Trust has to be earned. And this party, the Republican Party, keeps acting like black communities owe them their trust automatically while simultaneously minimizing the issues that matter to us. And then we have Kash Patel, of course, Lord Jesus, because Kash Patel represents another dangerous evolution inside this Republican Party. The reward system for loyalty and aggression over professionalism and competence. This man leads the FBI, of course, while controversy follows him all over the place. Luxury hotels, luxury travel, you name it. Agents reportedly being frustrated and demoralized. And instead of Republicans being deeply concerned about protecting the integrity of these institutions, only thing that seems to matter to them is this person loyal? That's it. That's a standard now. No seriousness, no discipline, no credibility on the Republican Party side, just loyalty and performance. And honestly, that tells black voters a lot about the current Republican Party, how they treat Kash Patel. Because many of us already feel like fairness and accountability get applied differently depending on who's involved. So when we watch people in power dodge accountability while aggressively attacking everybody else, it reinforces the feeling that the system still is not equal. And while all of this is happening politically, look at what's happening culturally online. Chud the Builder with his goofy ass. Hold on. Oh, hold on. I just erased something. Chud the Builder Lord help the child. He's the one who freaking got arrested because he shot somebody. I feel for Chud the Builder in a mental capacity. I feel for Chud the Builder, okay? Because the poor man apparently has to be suffering. He has to be. Because there's no way that this person should be doing what he's doing. Hold on. Let me hold up, chat. Let me hold up. Let me put this on. Here he is. Chud the Builder. Lord have mercy. Listen to the lawyer.
It's a check on the government. And it's a check on the government to prohibit time, place, and manner of speech, right? Not and to prohibit the content, from them regulating the content of speech. The First Amendment is designed to protect us from the government. It doesn't protect you from another citizen. So here are his charges: attempted criminal homicide, employing a firearm during a dangerous felony, aggravated assault, reckless endangerment with a deadly weapon, and he's facing up to 54 years in prison. No, I don't think he's going to get that. But and his only defense is self-defense. And proportion is the key. It has to be reasonable under the circumstances where another person, a reasonable, prudent person would act the same way. And the amount of force used has to be proportional to what the force that was used against him. But he's going to be convicted on one of these. Probably not attempted homicide, because I don't think he was trying to kill the guy. But employing a firearm during the commission of an aggravated felony or dangerous felony, I think that could pose a little bit of an issue for him. So I hope your bologna sandwich is to your liking, because you'll get plenty of those while you're sitting there and eating your veggie loaf.
See, that's some goofy shit. See, we got some goofy shit going on. Chud the Builder, situation honestly disturbed the hell out of me. Here's a grown-ass, clown-ass man building internet fame off deliberately provoking black people with racial slurs, monkey noises, insults, humiliation tactics, all for clicks and views. What the fuck is going on? And his life is just spiraling out of control because he don't like black people. How the fuck is it that you not liking black people get you to the point where you going to prison? Somebody please explain that to me. How does your hatred of black people put you in the predicament of going to prison? I'm just confused about that shit. Okay? Goofy shit I don't understand. And before somebody says it's just the internet, no, bitch made nigga, he is bigger than that. Because people like him have become emboldened by the atmosphere this political era has created. Trump didn't invent racism. America already had racism. But Trump absolutely normalized public cruelty in ways that made hateful people feel louder, safer, and more protected to do what the fuck they wanted to do. Like goofy motherfuckers like Chud the Builder. That matters. When leadership constantly mocks opponents, attacks minorities, spreads fear, frames empathy as weakness, eventually that energy spills into society. People start turning hate into content, humiliation into comedy. Every person that done got their ass on here talking about I hate black people have got they comeuppance, have gotten a 1-2 punch. Okay? Racism is expensive. And right now it's going to put Chud the Builder in fucking prison. Dummy. Eventually people get hurt. Humiliation, turning humiliation into comedy. Rage into a business model. Your goofy ass is going to be in prison because you couldn't control yourself. Basically, you couldn't control yourself. Now this young man, 30 years old, sitting in jail facing attempted murder charge. He probably won't get convicted of that, but he'll probably get convicted of what that lawyer said he would get convicted of. Okay? After another confrontation escalating in violence because you can't control yourself. Black people on this planet just bother you so damn much. And honestly, it's tragic all around. It is a wasted life, broken communities, more division, more ugliness. And we don't even need to have this. This is what Donald Trump has spurned. Donald Trump has brought all of this to the forefront. And yet somehow Republicans still act confused about why Black voters feel alienated from this version of the Republican Party. Nobody want to go over there. Nobody wants to go over there. Nobody want to go over there. Nobody has respect for that party over there. Nobody. Really? The Republican Party attacks the DEI programs while pretending discrimination no longer exists. What the fuck is Chud the Builder doing if discrimination don't exist? They downplay racism while empowering people who openly flirt with racist rhetoric. What the hell is going on? Nobody want to go over to the Republican Party. If you ain't over in the Republican Party, there's no need to go over there. They don't want you over there. Republicans have made it very clear they don't want Black people over in their party. You attack books about Black history. Republican Party undermine voting protections, gerrymander Black communities out of their party, and normalize disrespect and cruelty from the highest office in the country, the presidential office, making cruelty and disrespect normal. Then you ask Black voters, why don't you trust us? Why y'all Black people keep staying on the Democratic plantation? Because we know y'all motherfucking ass over in the Republican Party don't like us. Don't want us over there. Why would we come over there when you don't want us over there? Every policy you have put into place has been to demoralize and streamline Black people out of the Republican Party. Okay? Because we see what you reward people with. And let me be fair tonight. Democrats are not perfect. We ain't said they was perfect. Nobody said they were perfect. I got criticisms there too. I criticize Democrats too. Crime concerns are real. Economic frustration is real. Government waste is real. Democratic policies absolutely need fixing. They need new leadership at the top. All the new leaders at the top is pussy. Yes, we need change, reform, all of those things. And both parties, I have to say, they have racism on both sides. But the whole point is the Democratic Party is willing to push equal rights forward, whereas the Republican Party is not. Everywhere we have gotten in this country as a race of people, the Democrats have pushed forward. Not the Republicans, the Democrats. So why would I go over to the Republican Party and you have never pushed any kind of reform for Black folks forward at all? Not one policy forwarding Black folks. But at least the Democrats still openly talk about healthcare and voting rights, education, access, criminal reform, fair housing, all that systematic stuff. At least Democrats acknowledge that historical disadvantages don't magically disappear because somebody says work harder. And I love it when they say work harder. This victim mentality. What victim mentality, bitch? What victim mentality? You mean the white men who think people are punishing them in 2026? That victim mentality you talking about? Then you need to talk to your white men in the Republican Party. At least Democrats still try to speak the language of inclusion instead of constantly feeding resentment politics. And representation matters too. Seeing Black women rise into leadership matters. Seeing diverse voices inside the government matters. Because this country spent generations telling people who look like me, that power was never meant for us. Republicans in 2026 increasingly seem more interested in fighting cultural themes and cultural enemies rather than building multicultural trust. And from my front porch, from where I sit, after 60 years of watching America evolve and devolve, I believe that alienating Black people stopped being a political accident for a long time with them. This is deliberate. I think they made a peace with not having Black voters. So now they just want to alienate all the Black voters. They don't care whether they're doing it or not because they think they got the Mexican vote. Unfortunately, you guys start putting the Mexican people in cages and you lost those people too. Because once your movement became about primary outrage, grievance, and fear, you eventually blamed everybody for the problems. You eventually alienated everybody. And too often black people still end up being part of that story. Okay. That's why so many black voters feel disconnected from today's Republican Party. That's why we had 92% of the black women not vote for a Republican. We ain't doing that because we understand we can feel the evil that is about your presence. Not because we're incapable of independent thought. That's not it. People keep saying, oh, why you stand on the Democratic plantation? It ain't got nothing to do with the plantation. We just know that the Republican Party is not welcoming of black folk. We just know you're not welcoming of black folk. Okay? We're not saying Democrats are flawless just because Republicans spent years of showing us. Through rhetoric, through priorities, through leadership choices, through cultural behavior, through this gerrymandering that they just showed us. They just wiped out all the black communities in this gerrymandering war or whatever they got started. They did that. Republicans did that. Democrats didn't wipe out the black vote, didn't dilute the black vote. Republicans diluted the black vote. Republicans did that. They diluted them out of having representation. Republicans did that. Okay. Now, this is where we're at. And after a while, people stopped listening to what you Republican Party had to say. Okay. And now we have to start listening to what we need in this United States. Here, let me play this last little thing. Okay, hold on. I got one more thing to play. This is part of why we don't believe that you want any black people in your party.
According to a study by the National Humanities Center, by the start of the Civil War in 1860, there were more than 46,000 plantations or estates with at least 20 enslaved people functioning across the South. 46,000. There were roughly 3,000 plantations with more than 100 enslaved people. Today, hundreds of these sites remain as private homes, wedding venues, bed and breakfasts, and tourist attractions. Many of them romanticize or sanitize their version of history as a part of the antebellum South. There's only one plantation museum that exists today that focuses solely on the experiences and the stories of those who were enslaved. That is the Whitney Plantation. Since 1752, the Whitney Plantation has gone through a series of evolutions. It began as an indigo plantation where at least 20 enslaved people from West Africa were forced to produce indigo dyes. The estate later grew into a massive sugar plantation with over 100 enslaved people working the fields and carrying out physically demanding work. Even after the Civil War, even after the Emancipation Proclamation, many former slaves remained on the same plantations. With no money, no land, and the threat of violence from their former enslavers, many former slaves had no choice but to stay as sharecroppers. These systems that entrenched deep poverty left many descendants of enslaved people with few options. At the Whitney Plantation, some black families labored on the land well into the 1950s and 60s. Today, the Whitney Plantation Museum is dedicated to telling the histories of the people who were enslaved there, to honoring the lives lost and the lives stolen. The museum honors the skill and culture of those who lived and labored and resisted against the systems that kept them from their true freedom. In the words of the executive director of the Whitney Plantation, the museum is, quote, in the long fight for justice, for truth, and for memory. Yet the Trump administration's focus on eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion from American life has been sweeping, targeting funding for government programs, for schools, for museums, for anything related to race, gender, or economic equality. The president threatened to cut funding for any school that maintained what he called discriminatory equity ideology. It's not even a thing. And his administration cut funding from multiple museums that focus on non-white American histories, particularly programs and museums that focus on Native American and Black history. Earlier this month, the Trump administration announced funding cuts to the Institute of Museum and Library Services that included 2 grants that were intended for the Whitney Plantation Museum. The agency said that the museum and the programs that the grants were meant to fund no longer aligned with the agency's priorities and did not serve the interest of the United States. Now, let's be very clear about something. Telling the full history of this country is absolutely in our best interest. And what is not in our interest is erasing Black American foundational history.
So, and this is the part that honestly hurts a lot because it's not just about elections, right? It's not just about Democrat versus Republican. What scares me in 2026 is that it feels like parts of this country are trying to erase the memory of what Black Americans actually survived and contributed to this nation. You can feel it happening. You just heard it. Libraries being pressured, books being banned, Black history courses attacked, museums losing funding, discussions about slavery, segregation, and racism being labeled divisive, DEI programs being dismantled, artifacts and historical protections quietly disappearing, federal agencies being pushed to remove language about race and inequality, even conversations about civil rights getting treated like anti-American indoctrination. That's crazy. And let me tell you something else. When people start trying to erase history, it's usually because the truth of that history makes them feel uncomfortable, makes them feel some type of way. You cannot understand American history without understanding Black history. That's the truth. You cannot talk about democracy without talking about voter suppression. You cannot talk about wealth without talking about redlining. You cannot talk about policing without talking about segregation and mass incarceration. You cannot talk about education without talking about unequal schools. You cannot talk about patriotism while erasing the people who helped build it. And we built it through our blood, labor, suffering, invention, military service, and the sacrifice of Black folk. And what disturbs me is how comfortable some Republicans have become with sanitizing history so future generations never fully understand what happened here in this country. Because if you erase the struggle, you erase the justification for the protections. If you erase discrimination, you erase the reason DEI existed, the reason why DEI was put into formation. If you erase voter suppression, if you just dismiss me as, oh, I got the victim mentality, she on the Democratic plantation. If you just dismiss me like that, if you erase systematic racism, you can pretend inequality today is just people not trying hard enough. Put your bootstraps on, do better. That's the game that the Republicans are trying to give you. As a 60-year-old woman, I lived long enough to recognize when history is being rewritten in real time. See, museums matter. Artifacts matter. Books matter. Education matters. Memory matters. Because once a country loses its historical memory, people become easier to manipulate politically. All those Black people getting all the stuff. Well, you giving all the Black people everything. You giving the immigrants everything. That's what they always saying. Young people today calling me, oh, you're the victim. Bitch made nigga, you ain't even lived long enough to give me a conversation about what I'm a victim of. Young people start believing racism. It ain't that bad. I done heard people on panels say that shit. They start believing discrimination ended generations ago. No, it ain't no more discrimination. You don't need DEI. You don't need the voting rights. If your ass ain't been paying attention since for 3 weeks now, the Republicans have been erasing Black districts so they don't have a voice in Congress. What the fuck you mean? What you mean racism and that still don't exist? What you talking about? They started believing discrimination ended generations ago. And now they goofy ass being shown the truth. They started believing civil rights protections came out of nowhere instead of generations of struggle and sacrifice. Then you have goofy ass motherfuckers like Charlie Kirk online talking about, we never should have did civil rights. Civil rights never should have been enacted. Bitch made white boy, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. That's dangerous. That's why Charlie Kirk lost my respect when he said something about civil rights, because you don't know what the fuck civil rights was put into place for. That's why I keep speaking up. Not because Democrats are perfect, not because I agree with every liberal policy, but because I refuse to sit quietly while people normalize division, erase history, attack the truth, and pretend like America's wounds healed themselves magically overnight. Donald Trump didn't create every problem in America, but under Donald Trump, this country became far more comfortable with open resentment, historical revision, and culture war politics that replaced honest conversations. And people like J.D. Vance and Kash Patel and these internet rage merchants like Chud the Builder didn't appear out of thin air either. They're products of political environments that reward outrage, loyalty, and grievance, and performance over unity and truth and accountability. And Black voters see it. A lot of Black voters see it. We see the attack on our country. We see the attack on our representation. We see the attack on voting rights. We see the attack on programs meant to level uneven ground. We see the normalization of disrespect and cruelty. After a while, you stop asking why black voters feel alienated and start asking why Republicans became so comfortable alienating us in the first place. Because at the end of the day, history is not just about the past. History is about power. Who gets remembered, who gets erased, who gets protected, and who gets blamed. And I refuse to let our stories, our struggles as Black people, or our contributions be erased just because they make some people politically uncomfortable. That's why I'm speaking tonight. That's why I always speak on every day, 10 p.m. Please hit the like, share, and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. And that's why we better keep speaking before silence becomes permission. And I'm not going to let you silence me when the truth is out there and it can be spoken. If you like my content, please hit a like, share, and subscribe, and put a comment in the comment section. I appreciate that. This is Petty Politics, and I'll be back tomorrow night at 10 o'clock with some other grievance that I don't like, or something else, or some more facts that people would understand or want to understand. I appreciate the like. I appreciate the share. I appreciate the sub if you're doing that. And this is Petty Politics. Thank you.